Hey there, today I'm continuing my series on shows cancelled in the same season they scored a top 10 ranking. Last time I took a look at NBC and their enormous list of top 10 cancellations. In this installment, I'm taking a look at a single show rather than 7 like I did last time. This is mainly because Fox only has 2 shows that fit this criteria, so it just made more sense to me to separate the 2 shows and take a deeper look at them individually than I did with NBC. Besides that, I hope you enjoy the video. My Big Fat Obnoxious Fiancée debuted on January 19th, 2003. It was a reality game show that focused on a Catholic school teacher named Randi Coy. Coy would leave her elementary class behind as she tried to win $500,000 by convincing her entire family that she and fellow contestant Steve Williams were getting married in just 12 days. If the couple is able to make it without anyone figuring it out, then both the contestants and their families get $500,000. The big issue is that Steve isn't a contestant at all, but in actuality he's an actor who's being paid to be as terrible and douchey as possible the entire time. To start things off, we see Randi dressed as a bride and being told she has to pick 3 men from the bunch to maybe be her pretend fiancé. After picking 3 strong, beautiful men, she's promptly told that everything she's just done is meaningless. Instead of the perfect mate she's picked out, she's instead going to be paired with Steve, a slightly obese but incredibly obnoxious dude who's just here for a good time. Throughout the rest of the first episode, the couple gets acquainted and try to figure each other out. This consists of Steve breaking shit, drinking copious amounts of alcohol, and trying to force Randi to watch him dance naked at the spa. Randi is oblivious to his machinations, and spends the majority of the first episode in a constant state of confusion to his behavior, which eventually leads to a breakdown as the episode ends, with Randi bawling during an interview, and Steve drunkenly calling out for her while sitting in a hot tub. Throughout the next episode, Claudia forces the new fiancés to do various activities under the guise of improving their chemistry. In reality, it's just an excuse to put Randi in the most uncomfortable positions possible. Our fascinating fiancés go to a wedding coordinator who has no idea that they aren't a real couple. Steve does everything he can to be disruptive to the meeting, such as spitting out food, licking his fingers, shoving cake in Randi's face, and being an obnoxious little kid throughout the whole thing. The coordinator, having seen many a man-child getting married before him, ignores Steve gracefully and progresses nicely with their meeting, conversing with Randi about cakes as well as other aspects of her planned wedding. After this fun meeting, they get to go to a sex therapist and then have dinner with Randi's best friend, Anna. And this brings us to the third installment of MBFOF, where we see our protagonist Randi still battling the evil demon lord Steve in an attempt to convince her best friend that she's actually in love with him. Things have taken a bad turn, as our favorite fake fiancé, Steve, has joined the meal. His behavior is so opposite to Randi's that at a certain point she has to reprimand him like he's a little kid. Anna leaves and Randi decides to teach Steve yoga, while Steve decides to shit his pants. After spending a relaxing night apart, Randi decides she isn't done changing our main man Steve, so she takes him to get a full makeover, which includes a back wax, as she is widely known for her hatred of furry men. The couple then has dinner with Steve's family, who is staying with them until the wedding. Steve's family are all just actors like Steve, but Randi is still unaware. Prior to dinner, Steve decides to tell his family about the engagement, completely out of nowhere, infuriating our protagonist Randi. Things start to cool off as we sit down for an awkward and somewhat vulgar dinner with Steve's family. The episode ends with a family dip in the hot tub where Steve's sister pretends to drown and his dad takes his pants off. All in all, a pretty typical night in the Williams household. The 4th episode is actually pretty boring up until the end, so I'll just speed through it. Steve tricks the Coys into thinking he's awesome, only to completely shatter this perception the following day. At the end of the episode, Randi and Steve call everyone together for a toast, only to shock them by saying that the wedding would be taking place in only 3 days. This causes all-out anarchy, with her siblings screaming before running out of the room in tears. The 5th episode is just more of the same. The families just wrap up preparations for the wedding and do a run-through of the ceremony. The 2 families butt heads constantly and are at odds on almost everything, with the Coys being snooty and uptight, and the Williams being loose and free-loving while joking around the whole time. The only major event is Randi's discussion with her siblings, with her brothers throwing an absolute fit about her decision because she's not thinking about how it affects the family. They feel like they deserve a say in who Randi's marrying and that she isn't allowing them to express themselves. This ends with Randi's younger brother telling her that he'll be there no matter what, which satisfies Randi enough to leave. But once she's gone, he tells her siblings that he's not going to go if they aren't there, even though he promised her that he would. After the walkthrough, Catherine confronts her children over not supporting their sister. She tells them that she would never turn her backs on them, only for them to tell her that she isn't thinking about how this affects them, because this wedding is all about them and not about Randi. Alright, coming into the final stretch, we arrive at episode 6. Rain begins to fall on the wedding grounds, casting a gloomy shadow over the entire day. not only because of the overcast, but also because of how hard it is to untie wet knots. Despite the huge fit they'd thrown throughout the show, Randi's siblings actually decide to attend, and the ceremony begins with Bruce walking Randi down the aisle before handing her off to Steve. The minister starts to go through the motions, but just as Steve is about to say "I do," feeling cold feet, he decides to back out at the last second, revealing that this was all fake. Randi's mom and siblings storm off, leaving Bruce as the sole remaining Coy besides Randi. Inside the house, the rest of the Coy family is contemplating leaving, while the producers beg them to just go back out for 5 more minutes and hear the full explanation. Eventually they listen to reason and return to the wedding, where Steve explains the entire plot to everyone in attendance, while Randi explains her reasoning for even doing the show. She gives specific personal reasons that each member of her family could use the $50K they'd be getting for doing literally nothing. The Coy family continues to be immature losers by getting more upset at her following this explanation, with her father even going so far as to tell Randi he didn't think that this was about money and that she should have never embarrassed the family for any amount of money. Excuse me? You all find out that you're receiving a free $100,000 and you're upset about it? You would berate your sister and daughter because she gave you a gift of $500,000 to share as a family. I mean, these people are ready to cut her out of their lives for putting them through this for just a week. How many people do you know that make $100,000 in a week and get pissed off about it? Following this disgusting display by the Coy family sans Randi, Steve finally reveals that he's been an actor the entire time, which shocks Randi and leaves everyone in attendance speechless. He then gives a heartwarming speech about the Coy's love for each other. He finishes things off by awarding Randi the entire $500,000 she was going to split with him, as well as giving the other $500,000 to her family. Bruce finally embraces his daughter, followed by Randi giving Steve a hug. Randi gives a sappy speech and her siblings embrace her reluctantly, and that's it. The family gets the money and everyone lives happily ever after, right? Well, while they do get the money, things were not so happily ever after for Randi, as she was reprimanded by the Catholic school she worked at for even appearing on the show. Apparently winning $1 million by tricking your family into thinking you're getting married is against their morals or something. I don't really see it, considering I saw a lot of awful people doing awful things at the school I went to when I was younger, but then again, I just spent 7 years in a Catholic school system, so what would I know? And now we move on to my favorite part and what I mainly focus on here on my channel. How well did the show do viewership-wise? Well, this big fat obnoxious beauty of a show was able to land in the top 10 highest rated shows nationally, as well as the 5th highest rated show in the 18 to 49 demo for the year 2004. This is pretty mind-blowing considering the 8th place rating MBFOF pulled down made it only the 3rd show to land inside the top 10 in Fox's history. The show hit home with everyday people in a way the network really struggled to prior to 2000. Fox has always done well with young adults, hence their seemingly endless push for adult animation since The Simpsons took off in the early 90s. But this type of programming meant that the majority of people who watched Fox were on the lower end of the demographic, and that their viewership saw a sharp drop-off around the 30 years and older group. This group, along with older adults, had always watched Fox at a much lower rate than the channels from their childhood, such as CBS, ABC, and NBC. To push this narrative further, on July 11, 2002, Fox would air the first episode of American Idol. American Idol would start its life off ranked in the top 10, and it would stay there for 11 straight years. During this run, the show also held down the top spot nationally for 8 straight seasons, while also ranking 1st and 2nd in the nation for 7 of those 8 years. The singing show put Fox on the map viewership-wise for the first time ever. Taking into account Fox being founded in 1986, and in the near 20 years since the closest they'd come to a top 10 original show was 17th ranked Temptation Island, having a show debut to a 5th ranking nationally was pretty groundbreaking for the network. This was all on the backs of young adult viewers in their 20s. My Big Fat Obnoxious Fiancée actually did better with people aged 30 to 49 than American Idol did in the 2004 season, seemingly flipping the narrative and giving Fox a brand new audience to broadcast to. All of these things make it all the more shocking that Fox decided to cancel MBFOF after its first and only season. But why? Why would Fox end their 3rd highest rated show ever after such a small sample size? Well, therein lies the problem. The show's entire premise is built to fail, or at least built to only be attempted once. The show gave away $1 million, and in return they only got 6 40-minute episodes for their investment. That's not even mentioning renting the mansion, setting up an entire fake wedding, and paying the whole film crew and all the other people who worked on the show. All in all, it's just not a good idea to spend so much money only to fill 12 half-hour time slots over a 6-week period. It didn't really matter how high the show was ranked or how many people watched it. When the show is built to fail, it's gonna fail. See, American Idol gives out $250,000 to one person, and they managed to stretch that shit out as long as possible. I mean, the prize is just a fourth, and they put out over 7 times as many episodes that year as MBFOF. Fox just couldn't justify the production costs coupled with the prize money that the show demanded, especially when they had another show raking in massive profits while spending substantially less. Did this need to be the end of my new favorite reality show? Well, not at all. They just had to lower the prize money a little bit or change the show's setup slightly to allow for a lower cost. I mean, they could have kept all the costs the same and just stretched it out to more episodes, and then the show would have been a lot more cost effective. But alas, I am not a Fox executive in 2004, so nothing I ever say or do will bring back my beloved MBFOF. And that's about all I got. Anyway, if you liked the video or if you're just a fan of my Big Fat Obnoxious Fiancée, let me know about it down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. As always, I've been Semantics. Make sure to remember that every day can be an adventure if you make it one. Other than that, have a great day today, everybody.